All right, guys, just listen up. This is our last section. Okay, so listen properly. Okay, so basically, the last section is all about biotechnology and how we can actually overcome problems by using biotechnological solutions. Now, if you look at the picture over here, this is actually a picture of the Amazon rainforest. All right, so the Amazon rainforest here is actually known as your carbon sink. And the reason is because the plants, all right, they undergo a particular process. And what is that process? Photosynthesis. Very good. So if it undergoes photosynthesis, what is the source of that reactant that it needs to undergo before producing whatever it has to produce? What does it need? Besides chlorophyll, water, there's one more important component. Light. Besides light, one more, which you need to recycle its nutrients. Glucose is the end product, but carbon is the basic. So you need carbon dioxide. All right. So that is why it's known as the carbon sink. And the trees over here in the Amazon, tropical rainforest, they have a beautiful role, and that is to balance the amount of oxygen and the amount of carbon dioxide. So there's a relation. Remember when I talked much earlier on, you know that respiration and photosynthesis play a very important role because they actually balance the amount of oxygen. They also balance the amount of carbon dioxide here as well. However, very unfortunate, as we come into the 21st century, deforestation, open burning, and you know, so many other factors that actually result in this ecosystem being disrupted. Okay, so whatever it may be, what we have to do now as human beings is that we need to make sure that this forest is actually preserved. Okay, so as a result here, the forest is unable to mop up. There's one section here which is mop up, but you will check later when I uploaded everything onto Daymap. But there's a term which we use, mop up. It means to mop up the excess, to what you call that, to take in, right? To take in the amount, to absorb the extra carbon dioxide in the environment, and that's where they can balance. But with the recent deforestations, you get less forest, you're unable to mop up, and as a result, you will actually have an enhanced greenhouse effect. Okay? Now let me see if this one works. Come on. I don't want this. Why isn't this working? That's all right. This particular slide here is actually showing you, all right, forget pyramid of biomass, I must have done it wrongly, but I'm going to fix it after this. This here is actually what you call an exponential growth, but don't worry, I'm not going to ask you about exponential growth. I'm not going to ask you about those. I mean, I do ask you about the growth curve model, but I won't ask you about this. But this is just here to show you that small within a small period of time, right, your population size just shoots up. This is what we call an exponential increase, all right? Very drastic increase in terms of the number as soon as time goes by. All right, it is not the normal curve where everything goes up very slowly and steadily to sort of like produce that beautiful balanced ecosystem. All right, so as a result from this, the ecosystem is not able to sustain the drastic growth of humans. All right, and this is what we're talking about, human population. All right, the booming structure of it. Why isn't this working? Okay. When you come across problems or even solutions, when you come across problems and solutions, there are a few main points that you have to think about. What is the main issue of this problem here? How does it affect the environment? What sort of biotechnology or biological methods that you need to solve it? How do those methods overcome the issue? And finally, how do you see these methods being used in future? These are some of your important key points that you need to take into consideration. All right? But as we go along, we will try to answer some of this bit by bit. All right? So, if we talk about farmers, they're all in the field trying to improve their crops or even trying to improve production. Most of the time they will always use chemical fertilizers. But guys, let's try to think back. Why is chemical fertilizers not encouraged to be used? Can someone try to explain? I mean, give a logical reason why. Yes. Yes, exactly. So there is a chain reaction. Very good. There's a chain reaction here. If you eat the chemical fertilizers which has been distributed by farmers to the plants, there is a chain reaction, right? There is a buildup of the toxicity from the plant and going up as well. Now, another reason why we don't use chemical fertilizers is because it causes eutrophication. Have you guys heard about eutrophication? We talked about that in the previous lesson. Eutrophication here is a process whereby excess nutrients, for example, nitrogen and phosphorus as well, are disposed into the lakes or even water, and that will cause an algae bloom. You see, you will come across this section later on, and you will know what I mean exactly by eutrophication. All right. So, because of that, when you have eutrophication in a lake, what happens to the amount of dissolved oxygen? Will it increase or decrease for the aquatic organisms? It would decrease. So as a result, if it decreases, the aquatic organisms are not able to take in oxygen and they're not able to go in respiration. See how I managed to see how I managed to connect those key points? So it is important when you think of an issue, you think back to the knowledge in biology that you have already known, that you have already understood, to try to say, right, we are trying to solve this. How are we going to solve it? So instead of using chemical fertilizers, we have what we call biofertilizers here. NTS here is actually an example of a company, Nutri-Tech Solutions, that actually come up with the production of biofertilizers. There are many other companies that come up with this, but this is one of them. All right. And if you have a look over here, right, let's see the description. Full season phosphate supply without lockups, bio-friendly, colloidal clay-based rock phosphate. So it does contain phosphate, but it does not go to the point that it is like those chemical fertilizers that will cause eutrophication in the lakes. All right. So biofertilizers are actually eco-friendly. And I'm sure most of you would have heard the word eco-friendly before. All right. Not only does it not harm the environment, it also induces the level of soil microorganisms and the worms inside. What is the niche of these worms in the earth? What do they do? Yes, they loosen the soil. Fantastic. Good job. So that is why by using biofertilizers, you are allowing these worms to play the niche role in the earth and the soil itself. All right. So there is a series of connectivity when you connect the points. It's beautiful. Once you get the grasp of connecting it, you'll be fine with it. All right. But it takes practice. You may have it in the head, but if you do not know how to put it in words, it's going to be difficult. All right. So we will practice more and more after this. Another one, plowing, for example, and also cultivating the land and the earth. All right. These are the two common methods farmers will use to loosen the soil. But the problem here with this is that it will result in what you call a hard pan soil. If we have a look here in the type of the earth, you will see lots of holes in between, lots of cracks. It's just like imagining yourself, you have, those heel cracks, for example. This is actually the crack of the earth. The earth here is actually very dry. Due to the excess of those two methods, this is easily damaged. And as a result, water is not able to seep through. When water is not able to seep through, it is actually carried down to the lake. So if water is not able to seep through, what happened to the plants? What will happen to the plants? Will they get their sex? They won't get anything. It will just run through. And as a result, your agricultural crops are not able to be grown properly. All right. So one way that we can do is actually deep reaping it. All right. So this is one method that farmers will normally use to deep root into the soil. Now in the notes section here, let me go to the next one. Right, in the notes section here, there is one section on breeding as well. All right, so I won't go into that because it's more or less, it is more or less controlling the cycle of the female cycle, the ovary cycle, all right, the ovum cycle. It's a balance of between breeding. All right, so that is very easy reading to go through. But what I want you guys to concentrate more is actually on how biotechnology helps the environment more and also farmers to yield the production. Okay, so I've really mentioned this one here. Water is unable to deliver the nutrients to the plants, and as a result, they won't get it. And at the same time, it runs off, all right, because the soil-based earth is not able to contain the water as it is. All right. Terrace planting, a very famous place in Bali, Indonesia. All right. What these guys normally would do is you can see all these beautiful terraces coming down here. They will actually plant their rice and paddy and let it grow. Right? So different terraces are used to for different plantings. It can be rice, it could be barley, it could be soy, anything, as long as we utilize it differently. So as a result, when you plant on different sections here, your nutrients will actually be maintained. And this is a very good way to avoid soil erosion. Unlike the deep reaping that we had, I mean, sorry, not the deep reaping, unlike the hard pan clay that we saw just now, this is actually trying to hold the soil all together. Okay. Another one, crop rotation. All right. This is a very familiar method by people, especially in the I think in the United States or even in Canada, to actually switch the rotation of the crops. So one moment we have this rotation: potato, barley, beans, W barley, WOSR, and also wheat. So if let's just say this is occurring during spring, during summer they will actually rotate it. So what's the benefit of actually rotating it? Well, you are trying to avoid the buildup of pests, for example. All right. You try to avoid this buildup of the pests is because they just have to be there for food. Correct? Organisms need food. Same goes for these guys, pests, for example. So if they know you keep on using the same crop during this session here, they will know where to go. But once you move it to the next one, they will also have to follow suit, but it won't be as drastic because they are so accustomed into coming to one location. So by rotating it, you're avoiding these pests to actually, you know, avoid them from their favorite food. Okay, does that make sense so far? This is all just knowledge that you need to know. Understand why is this an issue? How do you solve it? What biotechnology, what sort of biological methods that you're supposed to use for this section here. Okay? Now, this is actually one of the latest technology that has been done 2 years back in June 2013. This professor here from the University of Nottingham, he had actually done a research by inserting those nitrogen fixing bacteria. Have you guys heard about those nitrogen fixing bacteria that we spoke about yesterday? All right, we spoke about that yesterday. All right, nitrogen fixing bacteria. What is the role of this particular group of bacteria? Any idea? It fixed the nitrogen, the atmospheric nitrogen, into very good just from there, right? Nitrogen fixing. So, and this nitrogen fixing is only found in legume plants, for example, soy, you name it. But with these non-legume plants, for example, what he has done by using the biotechnology, micro injection, PCR that you have heard about it so far, he had utilized these techniques to actually treat these non-legume plants with nitrogen fixing bacteria into the cells in the root section. So as a result, once you have modified the genes of this plant, this particular plant over here is actually able to fix the nitrogen into the roots, and it does not need the other bacteria, not like the legume and also the organism that has the mutualistic symbiosis. All right, this is able to incorporate nitrogen from the atmosphere into the roots. How nice is this? And as a result, you don't need to depend on anybody. It's able to supply nitrogen for its basic nutrients. All right. So again, there is a lot of common issues and a lot of common concepts being built into each of this technology. That's the only thing that you have to know so far. Know why it is happening, how it's going to happen, why are we doing it? That will answer your question. Another one, biological control. This is a very straightforward section because rather than just saying, I'm not going to use any chemical fertilizers, I'm not going to even use, maybe if I don't have NFIX technology, because sometimes it can be expensive. The apparatus, the material being done can be very expensive. Whereas for this biological control, hey, I'm just going to use the animals. So to fight fire, you fight it with fire. Same goes for these guys here. You introduce a predator, a herbivore, a parasite or pathogenic organism in the particular population. All right. And as a result, These guys will be able to get rid of all your pests. This is a ladybug with an aphid here, all right? And it's trying to chew things up because this aphid will cause damage to the plants itself. On the other side here, this is another example. I believe that this leaf here is an alligator weed. All right, this leaf here is actually an alligator weed, and you have all those weeds along here. So this insect here is coming in to try to balance it. So there's a relationship between prey and also predator. So you can see there's so many concepts. When you see one picture, you can know, bang, lots of concepts coming up from here. It's very difficult because you're not able to see it yet. But what's most important here, whatever you have in your head, you have to translate it out. You have to talk it out. All right, you have to write along the way and state your reason why that this is happening. All right. Any questions? Yeah. Some of them still do. I think this particular picture on the right hand side here, they're still doing it in Canada. They're still actually doing it. So it's actually very interesting that you're actually introducing biological control in the ecosystem itself. One disadvantage of this, it might be longer. All right, because you have one ladybug for so many of these pests here. So it might be longer, but it's a safer way to actually control it. All right. Now, one major issue, all right? When you eat, when you move, what else do you need to do? This, you need to excrete. Very good. You need to have to excrete all your waste from the body. Accumulation of this waste will cause damage to your body components as well. Okay, same goes for these guys. One of the newer ways of how to handle sewage is actually by doing aquaponics. Okay, in your textbook, you might be come across all this, sewage, how we actually maintain it. That is just an example. But if we are trying to use something which is biological, this is what we're going to use. You have a fish tank here. Hi, fishy. We're going to move around and swim around. They're going to eat, they're going to chew, they're going to multiply, and they're going to breed. Now, as a result, they will undergo excretion as well. So all the accumulation of the waste that includes ammonia, that includes urea, everything will be here, will be in the fish tank itself, and it's not going to be good because an accumulation of it, will cause also eutrophication. You got to remember that eutrophication will also be handled in this case. So what it does, the water here will be driven up to another section here called the grow bed. All right. Then we have the plants here. All right. We also have a bit of bacteria involved in this because, guys, remember, what have we learned in the nitrogen cycle? There's nitrogen fixing bacteria. There is also nitrifying bacteria. And in this particular grow bed, you would have those two groups of organisms. So everything that we have discussed before is actually now coming into play and is actually making more sense. All right. So the bacteria in the plants will actually convert the waste into nitrate ions and also nitrite ions, all the soluble ones in water. And these soluble, minerals are recycled and they'll be uprooted by the plants. And as a result, the water here will actually be much clearer than before. And of course, you do have what we call a rock, all right, a layer of rock where some of this material which is floating will be suspended. So it's just like a barrier, right? It's trying to barricade and trying to ensure that these nutrients are actually delivered back to the fish tank. So you see, there is a recycling of water, there's a recycling of nutrients, and we try to make our best to say, right, we're trying to save the environment. This is what we're trying to do to counter sewage. But again, there is an advantage, there is also a disadvantage of this because we need more money to actually have more of this aquaponics. The advantage here is it's very simple. The process is actually very, very simple. So all you need to do in this case, understand the concept and try to apply to it. Why is it happening? How is it going to happen? And from there, you'll be able to cope with it. As I've mentioned before, eutrophication. This is the result of eutrophication. A green layer of algae bloom on top. It does not allow oxygen to dissolve properly. And as a result, the quantity of oxygen in the water here decreases so badly that you're not able to undergo respiration if you're a fish, for example. Okay, so this is a result if the nutrients or the nitrogen or chemical fertilizers leaches into the river. That's number one. Number two, you also have sewage. because sewage contains a high amount of urea and also ammonia and also all the nitrogen based elements. You don't want it to waste on this particular section here. Okay, so that is the process of eutrophication. All right, remember, it is an excess too much of nitrogen and also phosphate elements in it. Another one, to solve open burning, for example, or even combustion, we have microalgae here. In this content is actually a liquid filled of microalgae. And what it does, it actually absorbs the excess carbon dioxide emissions. And in fact, this picture here was taken from New South Wales. All right, this was also a very recent component of microalgae. Right, we don't want to use fossil fuels. We try to avoid it. Rather than using fossil fuels to burn, we try to use microorganisms to absorb the extra carbon dioxide. Remember, we mentioned about deforestation just now. What happened to the trees? It's dying. It will take a long time to grow. So we need to preserve them. But in a short term effect, we need to have this microalgae because whatever carbon dioxide has been emitted into the atmosphere and the environment, you need to allow this microalgae to absorb it. All right. But the emphasis here is you need to know there is a recycling of carbon dioxide. We don't really concentrate much we don't really concentrate much about how we try to burn it and try to balance the whole ecosystem. We try it by using microorganisms to do the balancing for us. Okay, that's the third one. The fourth one, biomethane gases. Right, methane is another gas which contributes towards the greenhouse effects, just like carbon dioxide. And methane is actually, generated from the decaying of organisms, for example. All right, and this will be linked very beautifully with stage 2 chemistry if you're learning a little bit more in detail. But whatever it may be, the methane produced is actually also very toxic to the environment because you have a build-up of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But rather than having methane being generated from dead organisms or even other organic products, we have biomethane generated from fresh organic matter using organisms, microorganisms especially. So the next topic after your test will be on microorganisms. All right, when we're going to do a few things inside there as well, understanding the structure, understanding the function of each of every microorganism, and from there we will try to apply from here. Okay, this is a biomethane storage fuel, all right, in Germany. Right, what it does here, it eliminates the release of a great deal of methane and other harmful gases into the atmosphere. Okay, so out of all the contents today, I need you to concentrate on four major issues here. Number one, we talk about the aquaponics trying to solve eutrophication at the same time, and also eutrophication is a problem. We can also use Anfix technology and also biofertilizers. So there is a series of relationships between those concepts that come everything together. Right? You need to make sure that you understand the whole concept behind that. Not only that, microalgae are also being used to solve the problem of combustions. And finally, of course, biomethane gases trying to solve the emission of methane gases to the atmosphere. All right. So these are all the issues, how we solve them, why we need to solve them. It's all to ensure that the ecosystems are equally balanced. Okay. That's the end for your ecosystems. Okay. Beautiful lush green. I love this. I love this slide. So guys, what I'm going to do over the weekend, I will try my very best to put all the videos I've done so far on YouTube so that you'll be able to use it. And I'm also going to put it onto the share files as well so you guys can grab them off. Okay, I'll try my very, very best. But for now, sorry? If you're in school, grab them. If not, YouTube. Okay, so anyway, guys, we will start practicing questions right now. My suggestion here is this: use your notes when you answer those questions. I'm not expecting you to memorize, I'm expecting you to know how to answer them. Any questions so far? No, all good. Thanks so much for listening.